Hello, it is Saturday the 16th of February, and it's once again in the UK, here in Leicester. It's blowing a gale outside, so I've decided to stay in the warmth of my study and record another Decentered Media vlog. So this is number 5. Now, a couple of things that have caught my attention this week, which is always what I want to kind of use these vlogs to do, is really just to kind of spend 10 minutes sharing some observations about some reports and activities that have been going on this week. And the first one is the report from the Arts Council England, about the way that art and creative activities can benefit older people. And I did a podcast with Jerry Padfield down in Falmouth, who works with Source FM, and is working on a project. I did that last week. He's working on a project where he's using radio to help people who may have issues like dementia, live in care homes, so they might be socially isolated, that kind of thing. So it's interesting to see what the Arts Council are saying about using arts and using creative practice as a way of kind of, on a number of levels. One is to kind of keep people mentally well, keep people feeling happy and content, keep people feeling medically well, so that they don't spiral into depression, which leads to other complications for other forms of public health issues. And thirdly, to maintain a sense of an active and participative community life. So the first activity that the Arts Council describe is, and you can find their report on artcouncil.org.uk, our impact /art culture wellbeing. So the research is showing that art and culture can help to improve well-being, and their focus was on people over 65 years of age. But actually, I think there's vital lessons that can be drawn for the rest of the population, because I think the kind of focus on creative access to creative projects and creative activities has been diminished in recent years, and there's a focus on business, and there's a focus on well-being by going to the gym, that kind of thing, rather than maybe the connections that are brought from people working together in a theatre group, or a painting group, or a makers session, a men in sheds type session, if you want. So I think where we kind of maybe have to think about this is the benefit from the creative practice, or is the benefit from bringing people together? So is one a catalyst for the other? How do you get people to come together? We are social beings, that improves our well-being. Is it the creative practice that does that? Probably a bit of both, because a creative practice is something which we have to run in a different way. It is, everybody has an element of creativity, whether we think we don't or we do. Some of us maybe struggle with that a little bit more than others. But everybody has the potential to offer something that is creative, and to have that reciprocated in a group is quite important. Unfortunately, the Arts Council website has got some gremlins in it. So when I've tried to look at and read some of the blogs and the other supplementary reports that they have on the site, I've been getting an error message up. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on this and come back to it. But I think it, kind of, for an interest in community media, I think this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be collecting evidence for, and to showing that the creative practice that comes from making videos, writing blogs, presenting radio programs, whatever form you want to take that creative practice in. Actually, there's a lot of parallels with the art sector, and maybe there's more crossover between these things. And in a week or two's time, I'm going to be talking to Jay Sykes, who runs the Arty Party project at Spark radio in Sunderland. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about that. The Arts Council do recommend, though, that you might want to look at the hashtag Arts Health Wellbeing. And I think it'll be useful to really see what kind of activities people are promoting, and really where it's not so much the mindset of the creative arts people, because that's kind of out there as far as I'm aware, and the activities I've undertaken with the Artwork Alliance, which promotes participative arts engagement, kind of demonstrates to me that there's a culture there. I wonder what will it be like to talk to some of the commissioners and some of the designers of these services, the social prescribing commissioners in, say, health authorities or medical practices. So maybe there's a kind of hint, kind of opportunity to go and look at some of these in a bit more detail. And I'll try with the Decentered Media podcast in the coming months to try and find some people who kind of work in this area to see if they can share their thoughts about it. This ties in with another report that I saw, which I thought was very good, which is from Ambition for Aging, which is a Greater Manchester-based organisation which comes out of the Greater Manchester Voluntary Services grouping, and the report that they've just produced called Social Infrastructure, How Shared Spaces Make Communities Work. And there's a really good detailed report, and there's a summary report. And the argument is, and you can find this at the ambitionforaging.org.uk website, and the report is available as a PDF that you can download and maybe print out and read separately. The summary report, I'll give you some of the headlines from it. It kind of says that in order to reduce social isolation, particularly among older people, we need a shared sense of space, and that we have to think about how we facilitate interaction between people in different kinds of spaces that are openly available to us. This uses the example of coffee shops, libraries, parks, that kind of thing. But that's quite limited in a way as a set of places for space. But what it does make the point of is that these things don't occur naturally. They don't occur by themselves. They're not necessarily happening, and that's why they need support. It's a kind of the interaction, that the day-to-day interaction that we get is kind of informal. It's unintended. You bump into somebody. So how do we create spaces that aren't destination venues, like maybe some of the chain restaurants are, but are kind of more casual places where you can just happen to bump into people, and it's between the kind of corporate world and the business world, and then the kind of rushing around to get home and feed your kids and get them to school and all that kind of thing. Where are the places that we just hang out? And I suppose pub culture is, for many people, used to be that kind of space where you would just go in and kind of have an interaction with people. But over the kind of 40, you've only got to look at Coronation Street or something like that. Those days of backstreet pubs in cobbled streets in cities and towns, they're gone. Now it's kind of large destination pubs that serve maybe 1,000 people in at once in an evening, rather than maybe 30 people sitting around having a warm beer, keeping warm in front of the fireplace. So the nature of social interaction has changed, and the way that we deal with it has changed. And what the report argues is that we really do need to think about what kind of investment we need to put in this. Now, from a community media point of view, I have to say that there is no mention of community media in the report, and I'm going to try and speak with some of the people behind the report, because I think it's well worth. It's a springboard, definitely, in order to be able to find out more about the kind of thinking that goes into it. But perhaps we need to be looking at how we view social infrastructure, and that our media is seen as part of our social infrastructure. Our social media and our broadcast media and our kind of newspapers are the points of social contact for many people, for most of us, in fact. And that if we are wanting to facilitate and support public interaction in those spaces, then we need to think of our media as having the purpose of not just informing, entertaining and educating us in that kind of Reithian BBC way, but actually to prosper and to facilitate social interaction so that it can be a spare for and an addition to the other support for social interaction that the report identifies. And it puts it in the framework of social capital, and in a couple of weeks' time I'll be talking to Russell Todd, who runs the community development podcast in Cardiff, and we're going to be talking about social capital, and this is linked in that kind of model of bridging and bonding capital, the strong ties and the weak ties that you have. Where do you form those connections within your community? Where are they tight knit, and where is it looser and kind of more interactive, more free flowing? So there's a good discussion to be had about the benefits of community media as being something which can facilitate and support these ties, these kind of ties. And that brings me to the final observation, the final thing, which was World Radio Day. And with John Costa last week on the Decentered Media podcast, we did a discussion. We had a discussion with Rupal Rajani and Sujita Barrett, who both have a long history of working in radio in and around Leicester. And it's well worth listening to. Kind of got some war stories from them about the way that radio has changed, how they got involved, their background and history as people being immigrants and members of families of immigrants into Leicester, and how they have seen change, and they've been part of that change, and maybe where it's heading in the future. And it was really interesting. Part of the discussion, the underlying discussion, is a kind of sense of belonging, and radio has this positive sense, when it's done well, of prioritizing a sense of neighborliness, a sense of belonging within a local community, so that you can listen and find out what's going on and where things are happening. So it was really great to follow the Twitter hashtag on Thursday, which was the UNESCO World Radio Day. You can find out more if you Google UNESCO World Radio Day, but the hashtag was World Radio Day. And it really brought up a range of different types of activities, well worth kind of crunching through that data from around the world and looking at how different people and from different cultures and different communities and different countries all use and see radio in a slightly different way, but all of them recognise the kind of ongoing power and potential for radio as a medium of intimacy, of engagement, and kind of the level of trust that people put in radio. So we've got something precious that we need to protect and we need to manage carefully. So I'll put some links up for the sites on the blog and on the feed under the YouTube video. As ever, if you want to kind of thumbs up to this, what is it that YouTubers say? Subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And if you want to support the work that we do on the Decentered Media podcasts, head over to Patreon. Patreon.com and look for Decentered Media, and a small donation might help buy some biscuits that we can give to some of the guests one week. But until next time, thank you very much.